Hey, with the NBA Finals,
drink water. Don't drink and drive. Hey, man, call your mother.
It means nothing. It means nothing.
Nah, they lying to you. It's about the money.
Now you're more fluent.
Hey, with the NBA Finals coming up, you know what Red Auerbach once said? He said, show me a good loser and I'll show you a loser.
I'm about to get mine and it's about time. Call us Grindhouse, everybody in a house grind. I'm just doing me, I ain't trying to outshine. Trying to kill my vibe is how you get outline.
Yeah. Show me a good loser and I'll show you a loser. I love that.
Hey, so what's up, y'all? It's the Hoopstorians. We're back and worse than ever. It's June 3rd, 2025. Let's get into this day in NBA history. June 3rd, 1984, Magic Johnson hands out an NBA Finals record, 21 assists, as the Lakers beat Boston, game 137-104 in Game 3 of the 84 Finals. Celtics come back and eventually win in 7. My question for you guys is this. If you guys had, since they're always compared, if you guys had nobody on your team and you were starting out your franchise and they were both on the draft board, you didn't know who else you were going to get, would you pick Bird or Magic?
Magic. I'm building my unit around him. Yeah.
I'm with that. I think Magic.
You, Professor?
Do I have to really answer that question?
Mm-hmm. We know what you're like. Me personally, I'm a Bird guy. You know what I mean? I think Bird is the one, so I'm going with Bird. I guess I'm the only one on the panel. Mm-hmm. And that was this day in NBA history. So anyway, we want to get into it, some of the mental aspects of the game, the finals coming up. So let's start off with this. Professor Golden, I know you had hit me up with this. You wanted to talk about the term three-peat. Could you get into that, what you wanted to talk about with that topic?
Yes. It's interesting how I guess they talk about the modern day repeats.
Yep.
I guess, and you think about, you mentioned the last time I was here, we talked about Bill Russell. Mm-hmm. And Bill Russell won from 1959 to 1966. How many years is that? 8 years. Mm-hmm. And they said, well, you know, that wasn't really, there was only a few teams in the league. Okay. But if you look at different sports, you have to play your generation, the players that you're playing. Okay. And I'll make this connection with baseball. I'm going to name Mickey Mantle, Frank Robinson, Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Roberto Clemente. The reason why I mentioned Ernie Banks, who I met, I mentioned those players for this reason. They were all playing in the league before 1960. Why do I bring that up? Because in 1961, they expanded the league to 8 games. See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So they would be higher. And in fact, Willie Mays and Ted Williams would be higher on the home run and hit list. They both missed, if you combine, 7 years of actual play due to military service. Ted Williams, World War II, and the Korean War. Willie Mays, the Korean War.
Sure.
Just saying. So those are facts.
Yep.
And so when you start thinking about the era Russell played in, he couldn't help. He had to play the competition he played. That's why the mental aspect. And I'll say this. When Red Auerbach, because you mentioned Red Auerbach earlier, Red Auerbach retired as coaching. So he's trying to figure out, okay, who should I get to coach this team? Well, who can coach Bill Russell? The only person that can coach Bill Russell is Bill Russell. That's the mental thing that you talk about.
Yeah.
And they lost in 67 to Philadelphia 4-1. Came back from a 3-1 lead as the player coach and won the championship. Then came back as a 4th seed and won back-to-back as a player coach. Those are facts.
Here's how many guys in NBA history have done that.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
So when you start thinking about, and you start, Jerry, you start spewing the facts, they're going to call you a hater. Those are facts. Just tell them to look up the facts. Those are facts.
Professor, you can't argue facts, right? I can argue opinions. I can argue motions. I can't argue facts because this is what it is. Right. So with that being said, my go-to has always been, when you talk about the Russell era, my go-to is the fact that there's only 8 teams. I got to see the tougher competition even more. So there aren't sprinkled in nights off, and anybody that knows anything about that era knows that Elgin Baylor didn't play for the Celtics. Wayne Embry didn't play for the Celtics. Jerry West didn't play for the Celtics.
Keep going.
Oscar Robertson didn't play for the Celtics. Willis Reed didn't play for the Celtics. I mean, I can go down the line of guys who did not play for the Celtics. And these are the guys that I have to see. Chamberlain did not play for the Celtics. I have to see these guys on the regular. So mentally, I have to be prepared to see these guys more than I would have to see Mark Williams today. Or I would have to see Nick Claxton today. Imagine having to see Olajuwon on the regular. Imagine having to see David Robinson on a regular basis. And in between that is sprinkled in Dwayne Shinchis, right? In between that is sprinkled in those
the
guys.
late Dwayne Shintis.
My fault. The late Dwayne Shintis. The late Kevin Duckworth. These are guys that are sprinkled in to having to see Olajuwon and David Robinson. Well, that's not going on in the 60s because it's only 8 teams. So I got to see Chamberlain a lot more than I would have to.
Okay, let me say this.
Yeah, I want to say this on sidebar real quick. You didn't even bring up Walt Bellamy, and that guy averaged 30 and 20 in one season.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I want to say this. I'm going to mention 6 players. Let me do this correctly.
Sure.
Willis Reed, Dave DeBusschere, Bill Bradley, Clyde Frazier, Pearl Monroe, Dick Barnett. They played on the same team. All of them are Hall of Famers.
Sure.
Correct?
Yes, that's correct.
None of them played for the Celtics. Am I right?
That's correct.
Correct.
And Oscar Robertson and Kareem played together along with the great Bobby Dandridge.
Who we
Those
talking
are
about,
facts.
bro? Who we talking about?
Who you spoke with?
We did.
Okay.
Bobby Dandridge is a friend of the show.
Yes, he is. And yeah, friend of the show and then some. So when we start talking about 3P, you have to look at those are facts. And they were able to do, and that's the mental aspect of what this guy was able to do. And like I said, he repeated as a player coach. As a player coach.
I think that's even more difficult, Professor.
And then he did, and then he did as a 4th seed.
Yeah.
See, you got to get straight. Now, I was thinking about the conversation we will have today, and I was thinking about, I had to bring the analogy of baseball. When you start talking about, well, this guy Reggie Jackson tied Mickey Mantle for World Series home runs or playoff home runs. Yeah, when Mickey Mantle played, he played before divisional play. Divisional play in baseball didn't start until 1969. Okay, then they added the wild card 25 years later, 1994, but because of the strike, it wasn't instituted until 1995. Okay, so you really can't compare because people have more games. I'm not disputing their greatness. When Caitlin Clark broke Tisha Penicheiro's record, who should be in the Hall of Fame, I'm going to continue saying it, along with Kathy Poindexter and Rebecca Brunson and Jennifer Azzi, but that's another story.
Sure.
Okay. Caitlin Clark had 8 more games to do it. Excuse me. Yeah, 8. No, 10. Because when Tisha Penicheiro set the record, she played 30 games. Caitlin Clark played 40. Those are facts. Those are facts. So we're talking about this thing and going back to the whole thing about 3P. We're talking about 8 championships in a row. I don't give a damn how many teams in the league. That's difficult to do, especially when you name the players that I mentioned. Okay.
Hey, I actually ran an algorithm. For Michael Jordan in his era with 29 teams and 27 teams to win 6 at the 1 in 480 million chance. For Bill Russell to win 11 in his era, it's a 1 in 4 billion chance.
Okay. Let's go back to when Michael Jordan came in the league. I saw an interview Michael Beasley did, and he said, we didn't see the failures Michael Jordan had before he won 6 championships. And I wish I could have responded to him and say, sir, You didn't see the failures.
Yes, we did. We were there.
Saw the failures.
We were there.
And let me run this down for my student in this chat, because he's gonna always be my student. I don't give a damn how big he gets. Bird B. Jordan swept him. Not once, but twice. Go and look it up. 86 and 87. That's when it was the best of 5. 3-0 in 86, 3-0 in 87. Okay?
Yep.
Okay. In 88, they met the Pistons. 4 games to 1. In 89, they met the Pistons. 4 games to 2. In 90, they met the Pistons. 4 games to 3. Okay? Those are facts. So last I checked, and plus they lost to Milwaukee his rookie year. So last I checked, you 0-6 in the playoffs. And you never won a playoff series without Scottie Pippen. Go and look it up. And Scottie Pippen even said it himself, but it took him 30 years to make that statement. I've been saying it for years, but that's another story. He never even won a series without Scottie Pippen. Those are facts. That's not hating. But see, we're in a time frame where if you bring facts, you're a hater. Okay, well, I'll be a hater. These are facts. I'm not hating, I'm dealing with facts. Now, you started the show off with this day in history. Is that right? That's what you did. Yeah. You brought up that game. I remember when he set the 24 assists, but I remember what happened in game 4, and we still haven't gotten over that some 41 years later. We're still dealing with that because we should have swept the Silk had the virus. That's another story. Tomorrow is the 49-year anniversary of Game 5 of the 76 finals between Phoenix and Boston. Triple overtime, where Richie Powers, the referee, got into a fight with a fan. I showed it in class yesterday. It just happened. It was Friday, June 4th, 1976. If you don't believe the date, look it up. Yeah.
Professor, wait. Professor, I want to make sure I'm following you. We're in the NBA Finals. We're not in January in a regular season game. We're not in February right after the All-Star break. You're telling me that we're in the NBA Finals and a referee is getting into a fight with a fan.
Richie Powers. Game 5, 1976, June 4th, Friday, June 4th, 1976, in Boston. Some of the greatest games have occurred in that building.
A referee got into a fight with a fan.
Got into a fight. Yes, you can pull it up. Game 5, went triple overtime.
I do remember.
Earl Strom in the 60s as the ref used to fight fans as well.
Sure did. So this is nothing unusual, especially in that place. But there was, and remember, and I want to say this is important, because now things are starting to come out about Bernard King, about how great he was, which we already knew how great he was. Those arenas did not have air conditioning. I'm going to say that again. Those arenas did not have air conditioning. The only one really had one was the Forum in Inglewood. But the rest of them, the Boston Garden, no air conditioning. The Spectrum in Philly, no air conditioning. The stadium on the Madhouse on Madison, no air conditioning. Cobo Hall, if you're from Detroit listening, that's Joe Louis Arena, no air conditioning. That's what Bernard King did in Game 5. He dropped 50. And what was Cedric Maxwell's comments? Bitch ain't gonna score 50 on us. He dropped 55 on you.
Wrong.
Okay, those are
by the way.
What? Say what?
With a broken hand, by the way.
Okay, well, hold on. Wait a minute.
Sorry, I don't want to jump the gun, Professor. I apologize.
No. Broken hands on both fingers. Broken fingers on both hands. Excuse me. Couldn't stop him. And the only reason why my student loves Bird, and that's why anytime you have the media compare a white athlete in the NBA to Bird, they need their media credentials taken. They need to be fired on the spot. I'm just being honest. Okay, I'm just being facts. And when they start talking about 3-point, well, he's the best shooter of all time. Hold on, you got the freedom to shoot. These are facts. Bird won the 3-point shooting contest 3 times in a row, 86, 87, 88. And the only guy who tied him was Craig Hodges, my man. Those are facts. Chicago's own Park Forest, Chicago Heights, Craig Hodges. Richie's High School. If you don't know, look it up.
Now, Professor, there are some people who will counter that with, well, he didn't do it in games. He won the 3-point contest, but that wasn't in the game. He was able.
Who?
Bird. He won the 3-point contest, but he wasn't able to do it in games. He didn't shoot the ball like Steph Curry at that volume that Steph Curry shot it at. He didn't shoot the basketball at the volume that these guys shoot it at.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yes, sir.
Speak of the devil, chill.
Okay. Back then, the 3-point shot was not part of the offense like it is today.
Sure.
Okay. If you gave Bird a challenge, I'll just say this. Bird told his teammates, I'm going to shoot left-handed in this game. I'm not going to use my right hand. What people don't know is Bird is left-handed. Okay, he's left-handed, just like LeBron James is left-handed. They just shoot right-handed.
Right.
Okay, that was a fact. Thank you. And if you think about that 60-point game, you have to remember what Kevin McHale did in the game before where he scored 56. And Quinn Buckner said the mistake he made was he didn't score more. Because Bird is competitive as hell.
Sure.
He ain't going to let nobody know. And if you remember, what was it, Jared, the last 3-point shooting contest where Bird is, and Dale Ellis said, the biggest regret I did, yes, do it again. He put up this finger here and as the ball is in the air, and he knew it was going in.
First of all, he didn't even take his warm-up off. Let's start.
In none of those contests, he took his warm-up off.
We could start.
Yeah, none of them.
So,
wait a minute, the second one? He didn't take him off. I know he walked in the locker room and told the players, okay, which one of y'all taking second? That was in Dallas, because I'm going to win it.
I was in 86.
86.
Yeah.
I was in 86.
Those are facts.
Sure.
Those are facts. So we start talking about and that ties into Russell, the mental aspects. And Bird says something that pissed me off, but it came true. After game 6, when we beat them at the Forum in 84, he said they ain't winning game 7. He said it. They had their chance. And when he said that again, 4 years later, when they beat the Hawks in the Omni, and they went back, and that's the best game Bird ever played. Go and look it up. Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Semifinals. Bird versus Dominique. Bird had 34 in that game.
13 rebounds, too.
13 rebounds. He hit and if you listen to Musburger and Heinsohn, they said it's a duel. And they're saying, okay, now it's so-and-so's turn. Now it's so-and-so's turn. The other guys were like, we just watching. This is greatness, man.
Professor, when you talk about the mental aspect of the game, and you talk about Russell and his ability, just as a coach, to get everybody on the same page, how does that tie in to what also he was dealing with from a societal standpoint?
Well, if you make the connection with what he was dealing with and what Jim Brown, the same thing, racism.
Sure.
And what he tried to do is like, okay, we are a team. We have to rely on each other. And the racism motivated him to do great. Just like the racism motivated Jim Brown to do great. The racism motivated Bob Gibson to do great. Bob Gibson pitched angry in 68. And a lot of times they could show their wares when they got on the playing field. We ain't gonna lose because it's all here. We got superior talent. We got mental toughness. We're going over this over and over. We know what it takes to win.
Sure.
Yeah.
And Professor, to chime in, as we're seeing it now, for this NBA Finals, there's a bunch of young bucks going against each other. Where does the mental hump of getting over the edge when you're a young team kind of factor in? Where does that proving point for a team kind of make them evaluated as a great team of all time?
Well, first of all, when you look at the two teams, if you look at the two stars, they both been doubted. Both of them. If you look at Halliburton first, When he was drafted by Sacramento, I was like, that's a good pick, him and De'Aaron Fox in the backcourt. And when they traded him, I said, that's a big mistake because you had a backcourt for the next 10 years. Then you get Keegan Murray from Iowa. That's a young core. Now, Murray's the only one left. You look at SGA, he was traded for Paul George 6 years ago. I said, that's a mistake. You look at MVP, and what they do is they use those slights as, okay, and it's not saying I'm going to show you, I'm just going to get it done. And I let my play do the talking. And so what you do is you galvanize your teammates. And this is what Russell did. The last time I was on, we was talking about the whole thing about the balloons, how Jack King Cook, the owner of the Lakers, said, we're going to let balloons down. And Bill Russell was like, hey, them balloons going to stay up there because we ain't losing to the Lakers.
Yeah.
And I listened to your interview with Bobby Danger. I didn't know about Larry Keenan making those comments. Okay, about this series is over with. But what it did, it reminded me of 2016 when Cleveland was down 3-1 against the Golden State.
Guess he got his feelings hurt. Guess he got his feelings hurt when Klay Thompson made that comment.
Yes, when Klay Thompson. Okay, Jared, I'm glad you brought that up. Not just Klay Thompson, his father. They questioned his manhood, and I told people because my wife is from Akron. She knows LeBron. They know the family. I told them they got him right where they want him because now you done pissed him off. And none of LeBron's people believe. Maverick Carter, Randy Mims, none of them believe we got a chance. I
got a question for you on this, Professor, and because both of my astute colleagues right here, they each have LeBron James as the GOAT. What do you think about the toxicity of the fan base, especially I've noticed from like the Kobe Bryant camp fans? All they do is shit on LeBron. There's nothing that he can do right. Everything he does is a loser. I don't know how you're a 4-time champ, best player on 4 title teams, and you're somehow considered a loser. What do you think of this like cognitive disassociation, with like the LeBron James? Because I mean, all of us up here think he's great, whether we got him as the GOAT or not. And he's clearly not a loser if he won 4 times.
Well, that's a good question. Let me make this relate to history. They said Wilt Chamberlain was a loser, even though he won 2 titles, even though he was on a team that won 33 games in a row.
He got the record each time he won the title for most wins in the season.
That's right. And he led the league in assists as a center and told the media he was going to do it in 66, 67. And you know the other player who wasn't a guard who led the league in assists? LeBron James. Had 13 assists back in 2020. 2019, 2020. And so when you look at this, nothing he does is going to please the fans, Laker fans, because he's not one of them. He came in. Whereas Kobe has been there since he was 17. Kareem won 6 MVPs, but he's not Magic Johnson because Magic Johnson changed the culture. So nothing he does is going to please them.
Sure.
Okay, he's like, Kareem is liked, Magic's beloved. LeBron is liked somewhat by the Laker fans, but Kobe's beloved. And then Kobe's an ancestor now. So
those 2 things aren't the same thing.
Yeah, not the same thing. It's like I'll bring it home for you, Jared, because you're from Chicago like myself. Michael Jordan's like, he ain't Walter Payton. I'm just being honest with you. He's not Walter Payton. He's not Sweetness. Yeah, you won 6 championships, but you ain't Sweetness. You ain't.
I'm not familiar with what's going on in Chicago, but is Sweetness more of a folklore than Jay was in Chicago?
Oh yeah, no question.
Wow, that's interesting.
Sweetness is there's many of us, we don't watch documentaries involving Sweetness. We can't do it. It's too much. It's too emotional.
Yeah, I'm a big time Sweetness fan. Yeah. But Professor, to counter what you were talking about with De'Aaron Fox, I'm thinking about an organization in Sacramento who perennial losers. They draft this point guard in De'Aaron Fox.
That's correct.
They also draft this point guard in Tyrese Halliburton. So I got 2 of one thing that I need. Now, I can appreciate your logic about him playing off the basketball and one of those guys playing off the ball and them being productive. But the way that crew was put together, it seems like they looked at it like, I got two of one thing that I need. I don't need two CEOs. I only need one of them. I do have two of them. I only need one of them. Now I got to pick which one I need. Now, if I end up, I don't know, in 2 years, and I see De'Aaron Fox in the NBA Finals with Wemby, well, was Sacramento wrong for choosing De'Aaron Fox? But they were also wrong for getting away from him also.
I'm just going to say this to you, sir. In 1985, the Detroit Pistons selected Joe Dumars.
Sure.
They had Isaiah Thomas.
Yes, they did.
The rest is history. Both of them in the Hall of Fame. Both of them Finals MVPs.
Those are different positions, though, Professor. Those two dudes wasn't the same player. Like Joe Dumars wasn't a point guard. Not only was he not a point guard coming out of college, Joe Dumars was also in the top. I think he was 11th all time in scoring coming out of college. So he played off the ball. So he was the perfect complement to Isaiah Thomas. So I don't think those two things are the same thing. I think Tyrese Halliburton is more. I think Tyrese Halliburton is more of an on-the-ball guy coming out of school, like De'Aaron Fox. So I think those two things are different.
I'll say this.
Sure.
Isaiah Thomas can play he can play lead or two.
Okay.
What you do is you make it work. There's some way you can make it work. And that goes to the genius of the general manager. Because sometimes you got to make some things look. You know, those two guys play the same thing, but we can make this happen. Let's go back to 86. Okay, because I was working on assignment before dealing with Len Bias, because we're coming up. This is the days fall like 1986 this year. Today is June 3rd. June 3rd, 1986 was on a Tuesday, and they fall. Okay, the Rockets could have drafted Pearl Washington. They needed a guard.
They did.
You got Elijah Wan and Sampson. You make it work. But Sampson had injuries. But you do. That's the creativity of the general manager. You make it work.
And to go off that as well, because contrary to like popular belief, I live here in California. I live in downtown LA. That's why I'm wearing a Lakers jersey. But I'm a Spurs fan, and we were talking about three-peats before. Is it vital to win a three-peat? Because as a Spurs fan, we never had 3 in a row, but we had 5 over a numerous amount of years. So does that qualify as being historically great, or is that viewed in a different light to different people?
You know, it's interesting that you say that. You guys won 5 championships, right?
Yes.
I'll just say this. The Celtics were great in the 80s, weren't they?
Sure.
Yes.
They didn't repeat.
Right.
But people always remember those great teams because of their battles with the 76ers, the early part of the decade, then the Pistons in the middle and late, and then the Lakers in the finals. The Celtics went to the finals 4 years in a row.
Right.
Okay. They had the best record in the league 3 years in a row. They had the best record in the Atlantic Division 5 years in a row. And you cannot discount that 85-86 team lost 1 game at home. One. And that was to Portland. 1 game.
Sure.
And many people believe that's the best team of all time. We Laker fans will argue it. Okay. And they were getting Len Bias. They got Len Bias in that 86 draft.
Right.
So when they drafted Bias, my response was they're going to repeat. Because they were adding to their greatness. And plus he was younger.
Right.
So he was going to say, and they were going to put Bird in the backcourt with Dennis Johnson.
Which I thought was interesting, Professor, because to think about what you talked about when you talked about three-peating, to counter your point, why weren't they able to live or to be in their greatness? Because we saw the Lakers repeat in 87 and in 88. We saw the Bulls do it. In fact, we had a 10-year stretch from 1987-88 to 1997-98 where every team that won the NBA championship repeated. But the Celtics, on the other hand, who was considered the best team in NBA history, why weren't they able to live in their greatness?
Because they had to go up against the Lakers, who were champions in their own rights. That's the reason why.
But they were able to beat the Lakers, though. That's the difference.
They beat the Lakers, but they had to play the Lakers again.
Sure.
And they were motivated. And if you remember, they beat us on the Memorial Day Massacre was May 27, 1985.
Still a record.
They beat them by 34.
Yeah.
By 34.
114, 148,
140. That's right. And you remember that was the first year the 2-3-2 matchup.
Sure. Yep.
They didn't play game 2 until the 30th of May, that Thursday.
Yep.
Lakers did not practice. They had meetings. And in that one of those meetings, Magic Johnson told them, we got them right where we want it. They said, you crazy, man. They just beat us by. That's exactly. And I choked last year. We ain't got nothing to lose. They already wrote off Kareem. And the person who had the game of their life, it wasn't Kareem. It was Michael Cooper. Go and look at his stat. He went 8 for 9 in that game. Had 22 points.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The game of his life. Hit every big shot.
But can I counter that point, Professor, by saying that the Utah Jazz, the Bulls were able to beat them twice, and the Utah
never
Jazz
won.
But Utah Jazz were awesome.
They never won.
So they never won the NBA championship.
That's right. If you look at the Bulls championships, they beat the Lakers in 91.
Sure.
But all the other teams had no championship rings. Phoenix, Portland, Seattle, and Utah twice.
Sure.
Okay. The Celtics had to go up against the Lakers. The Lakers had won that iteration of the Lakers had won championships, so they knew what it took to win. Those other teams the Bulls played against, they didn't know what it took to win. That's why they couldn't close the deal.
Even though we were able to get back again?
Even though you were able to get back again.
Wow, that's interesting. Considering that the Jazz were
because
the oldest team in the league.
Because
is that the mental aspect of it?
It's the mental.
And to
go ahead.
To add on to that, the first example I think is that we all equate that 04 Pistons team to being one of the greatest defensive teams of all time. But people forget that they went to 7 straight Eastern Conference Finals. So is there that it's 6? Yeah. So is there where's that mental aspect?
That's great. Ben Wallace. Ben Wallace was 6'8". No, he is.
Mm-hmm.
He's less than 60, 70 pounds under Shaq.
Mm-hmm.
But he wasn't afraid of it.
Mm-hmm.
He
complained that they didn't help because he wanted Shaq one-on-one every time.
Mm-hmm. He wanted him. And if you go back and look at the tape, and in the late, great Ralph Wiley said, the Pistons going to beat the Lakers. Said it. And he beat him in 04. Then came back and beat him again when Shaq was in Miami in 05 in the Eastern Conference Finals. Lost to him in 06.
In 07 with the Bulls.
Yeah. Swept him. Always wanted the matchup. Was not afraid of him.
After they won the NBA championship.
That's right. And that team was mentally tough. And that goes back to the mental aspect.
Interesting.
And if you look at that team,
mm-hmm.
and I always like to make the connection with the WNBA, the Detroit Shock. Who was the coach of the Shock?
Bill Lambier.
Mm-hmm. And if you remember, the Sparks were going for a 3-peat. Who stopped them?
The Detroit Pistons, Bill Lambier, and the Detroit
Pistons,
Shock. Sure.
That's right.
That attitude.
That's correct. That mentality.
Sure. I can get with that.
That mentality.
That logic I can get with.
That's right.
I'm just thinking about in terms of being a champion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think about like you talked about the Boston Celtics, you talk about the Lakers.
Mm-hmm.
I've always recognized that when you're talking about leaders, you are as strong as your weakest link. Mm-hmm. And if you got a weak leader, that's going to show on your crew. If you got a strong leader, that's also going to resonate throughout the crew, because in the words of Mr. Bobby Bird, man walked taller when he walked with James Brown.
Okay.
So if you got a leader like that, you might stick your chest out a little bit more when you're running with Shaq. You might stick your chest out a little bit more when you're running with LeBron James or Kobe Bryant, because this guy, everything that he has resonates throughout the rest of us in terms of confidence. To your point, a 3-1 lead over the all-time great Golden State Warriors who won 73 games. Most teams would fold up like a lawn chair. James is thinking, just get one game. That's it. We don't need to win the series. Just get one game. Once we get one game, then we get back in it. That's all we need to do. Now, I'm not going to give him credit, Professor, for throwing himself. I'm not going to give him credit for winning the series because you threw yourself in the hole. I mean, you got yourself in that situation.
Right.
So I'm not going to give you credit for coming out of it. You don't get credit for putting the fire out in the kitchen that you started. You don't get credit for it. However, I do have to respect being a leader and getting your guys on the same page when we're in dire straits. Because at that point, everybody else is looking at this. Unlike you, they're looking at this like this thing is over. And if you as a leader, to your point, mentally, if you're broken, they're shattered.
Well, you know, I had two thoughts. I was thinking about Bill Russell. I was thinking about John Havlicek, because I know you guys think the world of Havlicek. And I go back.
Credit. We don't get nearly enough credit.
But if we go back to that game 5 in '76, you had the 12th man, Glenn McDonald, came off the bench and was scoring in the third overtime, hitting shots. And the game was it's the third overtime. This dude don't get no playing time. And he hitting big shots. He the 12th
and you got to figure it's the third overtime. He's been sitting for 58 minutes of game time.
But Charlie Scott fouled out, Dave Cowens fouled out, you know, Don Nelson fouled out, you know, I think JoJo White played something like 60-something minutes. But yeah, Glenn McDonald was hitting shots.
Wow.
And that goes back to the leadership. You got to pull up this guy. Because if you go back to that 16 series, you had Mo Williams coming off the bench scoring in game 7.
Yes.
This guy wasn't getting no time. Dante Jones? In game 6, he was scoring. Because I got game 6 and 7 on tape still. And I watch it periodically just to see, okay, where this team was and where this team is. So it's just so many different people. And if you go back to the Celtics, and Isaiah was talking about the play where he threw the pass in '87. What he did, and it was brilliant. He said, if you go back and look at that play, who are the two guys that were working together on that play? Larry Bird and Dennis Johnson. If you go back to game 5 in '85, it was 105-105. Everybody in the building and everybody watching knew who the ball was going to. They double team Bird. He passes DJ. Hits the shot. We got to go back to Boston. That's exactly what we said. Damn, we got to go back there. But the mental, and this is important. Pat Riley said, we taking one suit. We winning this on Sunday. Ain't going to be no game 7. That's the mental.
Jordan did the same in '93 against the Suns.
You brought up something really interesting, Professor, because I always thought with that play specifically,
which one?
When Bird stole the ball from
in '87.
In '87.
Game 5, yes.
I'm always thinking to myself the wherewithal that Dennis Johnson had to cut to the basket. Like some guys would freeze. Some guys would completely freeze. The fact that I'm watching him when he saw Bird steal a ball, like, oh shit, he stole it, and just dive to the basket in that instance. Not many guys would do that. And the fact that Bird knew, there he is, get him the ball, and he scored. I always marveled at that play in particular. Not the fact that Bird stole it, but the fact that DJ knew, dive to the basket. He's not asking for the ball at the long ball line, or he's going to shoot it. He sees that Bird stole it, and it's only a little bit of time left. I got to get to the rim. And those two were connected. That's why when they asked Bird, who's the greatest guy you ever played with, he said Dennis Johnson. I understood why. They're on the same page. Because if you go, what was that, game 4 in '87 when Bird he missed the 3-pointer? Who passed him the ball? He said DJ knew he was going to bust. DJ knew he was going to curl.
They talked about it, yeah.
He said he knew DJ was going to bust to the corner and he was going to get something wide open.
And he was wide open. He just missed it. I'm glad he missed it, but DJ passed. those two were joined at the hip, and that's chemistry. You can't teach that. Those two right there. And those of us, even as Laker fans, we always want to know how that team was going to look with Bird in the backcourt with Dennis Johnson. Because now Bird says he was going to retire. But this is the same guy that said he only wanted to play 5 years in the NBA. In his 5th season, he's in the NBA Finals of playing against Magic Johnson. No, he wouldn't have retired because he always said that he stayed with a bad back. The last 5 years in the league, he played with a bad back. Those are facts, people. If you're listening, he said, I wanted to stay because I wanted another shot at Magic in the finals. And when Magic announced, he said that. And when Magic announced his retirement, Dave Gavitt, the late Dave Gavitt, best commissioner in conference basketball history, the Big East, told him, if you stay on the books, you can get a guaranteed $15 million. He got up and walked out. It wasn't about, it was about that number 32 in LA.
Right.
See, that's that pride thing. Go ahead, Jared.
I want to talk about the mental aspect of like where we're at now to social media and the fandom. And the 2 points I want to bring up, and Jules knows about this first one because he was on when it happened. I was bringing up how they tracked Bill Russell's blocks through 100 games, and he averages 8.1 blocks. And they're mostly at the end of his career. So I think it's fair to say that Bill Russell is 15 points, 23 rebounds, 8 blocks a game. All reports have him blocking, and Chill, you're a historian of the game. What people regularly would say, block 12 to 15 shots a game. And then the data says 8. So I don't think saying he averaged 15, 23, and 8 is bad. This guy was on a live of mine once, and he goes, yeah, but we don't know if that's the whole story. Those could have been his best games. So I ran an algorithm. The odds of him them being the 100 best games, and just randomly picking them out of 963 possibilities, is a 1 in 2.33 quadrillion chance. I want to repeat that again. 1 in 2.33 quadrillion. And this dude argued the 1 in 2.33 quadrillion chance for about an hour. That's 1 point. And then I want to bring up, because you guys watched Bird, in his prime. I got to see him at his end. And then another guy, this happened recently too, is arguing how Carmelo Anthony is a better defender than Larry Bird. Now, I don't know anybody. Chill, I'm going to ask you, you can watch the game all the time. Have you ever thought Carmelo Anthony was a better defender than Bird?
No, I never thought that. No.
I don't know anybody that thought that. No. So my question is the toxicity of how are people this confident in being this wrong, and why do they continue to argue clearly a asinine point, I guess would be the politest way I could say it. Well, and Chill would know this too from the amount of people he talks to.
What happens is a lot of people, you mentioned social media, they don't understand the mental aspects. And everything with Bird was mental. He would let the game come to him, and then he'd take over the fourth quarter. There's stories he told Isaiah Thomas, you finished? Now it's my turn. He just take, and it wasn't a damn thing you do about it. But going back to Bill Russell would block shots and keep the ball in play. He said, why would you knock it in the seats? Block it to your teammate, then start the fast break. And if you go back and look at those films, he was blocking the ball to Cousy or Sam Jones, or Casey Jones, and they would start the fast break.
Yeah.
See? And if you ask the average person, and we talk about the Celtics, how did Patrick Ewing get to Georgetown? He's from Boston. Mm-hmm. It was Red Auerbach that told John Thompson, you need to stay because we need to go see this guy. He said, Red, I got a flight. He said, no, you need to go see this kid play at Ridge Latin High School in Cambridge. And the rest is history.
That's how he ended up at Georgetown.
Yep.
Right.
So, I mean, those are facts.
Yeah, that's how he ended up.
Right.
Yeah. And see, let me say this also. You talking about this time, and then go back to the mental aspect. Those guys back then would never sit out a deciding game. I would take it a step further. When I hear these guys, so-and-so is questionable. What? Isaiah Thomas played on one leg, scored 43. Don't he still hold the record of points in the quarter?
In the NBA Finals.
Yes, on one leg. They said they put everybody on, couldn't stop it.
He has
I
40
knew it.
stitches, Professor. He has 40 stitches, and he came back into the game.
Karl Malone.
Yeah.
Karl
He has
Malone.
40
Karl
stitches. He
Malone.
got his head. He literally got his head split open and
That's that
came back.
Chicago in him. That's the Chicago. You
Literally
know.
had his head split open and
Yeah.
came back. I'm like, come on, sew me up. I'm good.
And if you remember after game 6, when Brent Musburger interviewed him, he asked him of what injuries. He said, I'm playing. He wasn't on the injury list for game 7.
No.
And he even said, and if you remember, Chill, when he walked in on crutches.
Yes.
And going back to the mentality, if you probably know this story, Pat Riley made sure that he wouldn't be able to get any treatment. Because that's that mentality. Because he knew
that's mental, right?
Yes,
that's that mental thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
you know.
And
yeah.
no, I for me, because obviously I'm younger, but the person that I equate mental toughness to has always been Tim Duncan, and the fact that my favorite player of all time is Kevin Garnett, and obviously he's one of the most notorious trash talkers in history. So there was a story that most people know that KG came out on I think All the Smoke and was talking about how he would try to get under people's skin, and the only person he couldn't was Tim Duncan.
Not that dude.
So it's that. Where do you think people who are these silent kind of killers who don't react to anything? Where do their mental toughness lies? How do they get that blanket of being able to overcome the other kind of aspirations around them to go and play at the peak of their powers for such a long time?
What if I told you that they already have okay, this guy's going, I'm not going to say nothing to him. People know who they can talk smack to.
Mm-hmm.
And Bird was a trash talker, but you know who he didn't trash talk? What team did he not trash talk? The Detroit Pistons. He never trash talked them. And if you go back and look, he hated playing in the Silver Dome because as mentally tough as Bird was, they were just as mentally tough on him.
Sure, absolutely, Professor.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Professor, unfortunately, I gotta go. It was great to talk to you.
Okay.
This is really good stuff. I really appreciate it. I will see you guys soon.
Okay.
This was
Thanks,
great. Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. This was awesome.
Yeah.
But thanks for having me, guys.
Okay.
Yep.
But
Well, I want to say this too. One of my favorite stories about Tim Duncan's mental toughness, and we got to wrap up here in a few minutes.
Okay.
Is LaMarcus Aldridge said that the first person ever busted his ass was Tim Duncan. He scored something like 16 points in a row on him, and he said the whole time he was encouraging LaMarcus Aldridge. Come on, man, you got this. You can do better. That's right. Come on, just keep trying. Just keep, you know what I mean? And he said the shit was embarrassing. It was completely demoralizing. And to me, that's the greatest shit talking I've ever heard.
Mm-hmm.
As you try to build up your competition, you're not playing hard enough for me. Come on, give me some confidence. I think that would completely demoralize someone.
But you know what he was doing? He was also motivating himself.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's the whole thing. That's that mental thing. You know, but see, you got guys, we talking about this whole thing, they're willing to avoid certain people because they know it's going to be a tough night. And when I was talking about these different players that should be in the Hall of Fame, I don't know if you saw the story recently. We talking about Bernard King. It was a story just came out about a few days ago that the Celtics wanted to sign him. And Bird told him, you cost me a ring because you didn't sign with us. Mm-hmm. You put them two dudes together? Really? Who's going to stop them?
Nobody.
It's a pick your poison deal.
Say what?
It's a pick your poison deal.
Yep.
Yeah, well, yes. And they both had a certain mentality. You couldn't stop Bernard King. And Dominique Wilkins said he hated playing against Bernard King because the whole thing about that mental toughness. Mm-hmm. You know, and you had talked about the big three and all this. I was thinking about this. And next time you talk to people, ask them if they know history. Ask them about the Washington Bullets, and ask them who did they have a big three. Don't have them look it up. Just ask them. And then they're gonna say, no, they just had Elvin Hayes and Wes Unseld.
I don't even think most people would say that. They would say that's plumber ball, that's that's electrical, that's you know what I mean? Because that's another question for you. Why does the new generation, because growing up, I never did that. Growing up, when I was growing up, everybody used to tell me Wilt was the GOAT. And like that was kind of the wildly accepted, person. And he played, he came in, years before I started watching basketball, decades before I started watching basketball, at 35 years, something like that. 30 years, I don't know what it was, but why does this newer generation shit so much harder on the old generation? I don't understand that, especially since you have young kids in your class. Do you run into that in your class, them talking shit about the old players like this?
I have receipts.
Oh God, I would love to see those.
I have receipts and I show them. Then what I do is I have students look this person up, and then I tell them stories about those individuals. So sometimes it's like you have to show them. You could tell them stories, but you have to show them. You have to keep showing them and explain to them this is what occurred during this time. It was harder. See, when Bird and Magic came in the league, it was 23 teams. Dallas came in 81. Okay, then the league expanded again 8 years later, in 89. Then the league expanded again 6 years later in 95. So when you start talking about different eras, defenses have been legislated out of all sports, not just football or basketball, all sports, baseball too. It's been legislated out. So you don't have a hand checking. Derek Harper was known. He could move you around with his hand. In the
Alvin Robinson was really good.
Should be in Alvin Robinson. You had all them Fat Levi I mentioned last time. You had all these different guys who could move you with their hands. And you got this guy, Brian Windhorst, who has a show. He has no knowledge about history. He didn't even know who Steve Smith was. I mean, and you cover sports, and this guy's on NBA TV. Does the NCAA tournament, does other things. It was a good guard of the Persian Dope Boys in Detroit. See?
I was actually talking to Brian Windhorst once on one of his shows, and this was probably, 6 years ago, and I broke down to him, and this is just what the math shows at this time, and since we've been the last decade, by 2020s is what I mean by the last decade, a lot of teams are punting on the regular season, but from 79-80 through 2020, teams that didn't win 55 games, they really didn't win the title, except for three exceptions. 95 Rockets, they made a midseason trade. 04 Pistons, they made a coaching change. They made a midseason trade with Steve Wallace. And 06 Heat, who made a coaching change from Van Gundy to Riley. Other than that, if you don't really, generally speaking, if you don't win 55 wins, you don't win the title, or 2/3 of your game basically is the number like that. And Windhorst didn't know that. Windhorst said, "Damn, you really know a lot about basketball and things like that." So, I don't know. I've never tested his history and all that, but I'm just saying I've dropped some knowledge on Windhorst before.
Well, what's interesting? You bring up that 95 Rockets team. They won as a 6th seed. They didn't lose.
I say they're the greatest team of all time because they did the greatest accomplishment.
They did not lose a road game after game 2 of the conference semifinals against Phoenix. Did not lose a road game. Mm-hmm. That is, and I tell, because I got a college classmate in Houston, and I told him, I said, man, you go back and look at that team. They won most of their games on the road. They did the same thing that the Pacers did in this playoff, where they won a lot of their games on the road. See, and so when you start looking at that team, you mentioned the 04 Pistons, and what's the other team you mentioned? 06 Miami. Yeah, the Heat. Yeah. But I want you to add another team. You said 1980. Go back to the 77 Portland Trailblazers. They were 4th seed. They only lost 1 game. They only lost 3 games during that playoff. Now, you didn't have as many games. They went, because it used to be the best of 3.
Mhm.
and the Bulls and them played in the first round because that's when Bulls used to be in the Western Conference.
Right.
But then they swept Denver, and the Lakers were the number 1 seed. They swept the Lakers, and then they lost the first 2 games to Philly. And that series changed when Maurice Lucas and Darrell Dawkins got to that fight in game 2. And that series changed on that one play. But Philly blew them out. And even Bill Walton said they were scared to death of Philly, and rightfully so. But they played as a team. And remember, they were fast. All those teams back in the 70s, Golden State, Seattle, Portland, they were fast. And then you bring in Magic Johnson with the Lakers, and the rest is history.
And just like that. And on that note, guys, we are out of time. Professor, we want to thank you for your knowledge as usual.
Yes,
I want to thank Chill coming on. And I just want to tell everybody on that note, remember to bless the ones who broke you, because they're the ones who built you. And we're out.
Okay.
Put on a suit, drink water, don't drink and drive. Hey man, call your mother.
It means nothing. It means nothing.
Nah, they lying to you. It's about the money.
Now you're more fluent.